today the topic of my presentation is benign lesions of the eyelid. By the end of this presentation, the audience will be able to describe the benign lesions of eyelid, their clinical appearance, the histopathological appearance, the management of these lesions, and differentiate between the different types of lesions. So starting with the presentation, we categorize the lesions into different types. So they are divided into benign epidermal tumors, benign pigmented lesions, benign adnexal tumors, and finally we have the miscellaneous benign tumors. So starting with the benign epidermal tumors, this involves the squamous cell papilloma, seborrheic keratosis, and actinic keratosis. Squamous cell papilloma is very common and it has varying clinical presentations. The incidence increases with the age of the patient. It can have the appearance like a skin tag, which is narrow and pedunculated, as shown in this picture, or it can be sessile with a pink, which is pink, having a broad base, or it can be filiform shape, which have whitish thread-like hyperkeratotic lesions. On histopathology, we see that there are finger-like projection of the fibrovascular connective tissue, which are covered by irregular acanthotic and hyperkeratotic squamous epithelium. So treatment is the surgical excision of the papilloma, or we can do cryotherapy or chemical or laser ablation. So these are the pedunculated squamous papilloma. This is the sessile. You can see it is broad base. And these are the filiform, which are hyperkeratotic whitish lesions. Then we have the seborrheic keratosis. It is also very common. It is a slowly growing lesion found on the face and trunk and extremities of the elderly individuals. Clinical appearance is light to dark brown plaque with a friable, greasy, verrucous surface and a stuck-on appearance of the lesion. So differential diagnosis for this can be pigmented basal cell carcinoma, nevus, and melanoma. On histopathology, we see there is expansion of the squamous epithelium by keratin-filled horns, as you can see over here, and cystic inclusions. The treatment is shape biopsy, electrodissection with curettage, laser ablation, cryotherapy, or chemical peeling. Actinic keratosis is also a slow-growing lesion. It is common, but it rarely grows on the eyelid. It is mainly on elderly fair-skinned people on sun-exposed areas, which includes the palms of the hand and the forehead mainly. Hyperkeratotic plaques with distinct borders and scaly surface are seen, and it can be nodular or wart-like. There is potential for transformation into squamous cell carcinoma. On histopathology, irregular dysplastic epidermis with hyperkeratosis, parakeratosis, and cutaneous horn formation. The treatment, as it has a malignant potential, so whenever there is suspicion, we'll biopsy it, and it will be followed by excision or cryotherapy. Moving on to the benign pigmented lesions. Here we'll discuss first of all the freccle. It is a small 1 to 5 millimeter brown macule, as you can see in this picture. It is due to increased melanin in the epidermal basal layer, typically in sun-exposed skin. The number, it can vary with the degree of sun exposure, and it can also regress. And on histopathology, there is hyperpigmentation of basal layer of the epidermis with normal melanocytic population. So basically, we don't have to do anything interventionally for it. We will just ask the patient that while going outside, he'll use sunscreen for protection of his skin, and the symptoms will improve. Then we have congenital melanocytic nevus. It is relatively uncommon. When the nevus is present, it is small and of uniform color, but there are rare variants which include the kissing nevus and the split nevus, which involves the upper lid as well as the lower lid as well. A giant hairy nevus can be present, which is a very large lesion covering an extensive area of the body. Now, greater the size of this congenital melanocytic lesion, the greater is the potential for transformation into a malignant potential. So large lesions have a malignant potential of 15%, and treatment, if necessary, if we are suspecting a malignant or for cosmesis, is surgical excision. Moving to the acquired melanocytic lesions, the clinical appearance and malignant potential of a nevus, it is determined by the location of the nevus and the histological appearance. So it is further divided into junctional nevus, compound nevus, intradermal nevus, and the variants of the nevus. Junctional nevus is usually present in young individuals. It is a uniform brown nevus cells are located at the junction of the epidermis and the dermis, and there is low potential for malignant transformation. In compound nevus, it is usually present in middle-aged individuals, and it is a raised papular lesion. Clinically, there is a light tan to dark brown appearance, which is uniform throughout the lesion. The nevus, it extends from the epidermis into the dermis, and it has an even lower malignant potential than the junctional nevus. Intradermal region is the most common type. It is usually present in older patients, and it is a papillomatous lesion with little or almost no pigmentation. Why? Because the nevus cells, they are only confined to the dermis, and there is no malignant potential in this type. Then we have different variants of the nevus, which we have the balloon cell nevus, the halo nevus, the Spitz nevus. The dysplastic nevus syndrome, it is important, and it is characterized by multiple dysplastic nevi, which are known as atypical moles spread throughout the body. So we have just, for labeling it as dysplastic nevus syndrome, there should be multiple irregular shaped nevi with different coloration. They are not uniform, and the size should be greater than 6 millimeters. So the individuals who have dysplastic nevus syndrome, they are at an increased risk of developing conjunctival and uveal nevi and cutaneous conjunctival and uveal melanomas. Then what will be the treatment? First of all, what is the indication for treating?
Malignant potential
for the cosmetic purposes, or if there is a malignant potential. And what will be the treatment? Complete excision with at least 3 millimeter margin if the melanoma is suspected. Then we move to the benign adenoaxial tumors. First we have the seroloma. These are benign proliferations which are arising from the eccrine sweat glands, and they are small multiple bilateral papules, and they do not cause any problem to the patient regarding cosmesis, and there is no treatment plan for them. Then we have the pilomatricoma. They are derived from the germinal matrix of the hair bulb, and they are present in usually children and young adults. Females are affected more than the males, and it is a mobile purplish dermal nodule having hard consistency due to the calcification, and a giant cell foreign body reaction is also seen. On histopathology, there are irregular epithelial islands exhibiting viable basophilic cells at the periphery and degenerate shadow cells centrally. The treatment is surgical removal. Moving on to the miscellaneous benign tumors, first of all, we have the capillary hemangioma. It is also known as strawberry needles, and it is one of the most common tumors of infancy. The female to male preponderance is 3:1. Presentation is shortly after birth, 30% present in the first month, 50% at 3 months, and about 70 to 80% presents within 6 months of birth. And it is a unilateral raised bright red lesion, usually in the upper neck, and purplish if it is deep. It blanches on the pressure and swells on flying. So this is important. And the ptosis is frequent, and it may involve skin and the face. Amblyopia is very common with children who have capillary hemangioma. So which type of amblyopia is common?
vision deprivation.
The most common type is an anisometropic amblyopia, astigmatic anisometropic, because it is exerting pressure, the lid, it will exert pressure on the cornea and induce astigmatism. So the most common type is astigmatic anisometropic. On second, we have deprivational amblyopia if it is inducing ptosis and covering the visual axis. And strabismic amblyopia can also occur if it is deep, infiltrating the orbit as well, and it can cause displacement of the bone. So here you can see this is a child with capillary hemangioma. It is superficial as it has a bright red color. This is the histopathological appearance, and we can see multiple vascular vacuoles present within the epidermis and the dermis. And this is capillary hemangioma causing mechanical ptosis in a child. So what will be the management? So first of all, the first line is observation. We are going to observe as they can regress till about 5 to 7 years of age as well. But if they are causing amblyopia, then we have to do some intervention. We have the medical therapy and the surgical therapy as well. In medical therapy, we can give beta blockers, which have shown great effectiveness till, if given orally till 5 years of age. Steroids, oral, intralesional, and if we cannot give steroids to the patient due to some reason, then immunomodulator therapy can also be given. Then we have the surgical intervention as well if medical therapy fails, which includes laser photocoagulation, radiation, embolization, or excision of the lesion. Then we have the port wine stain. It is also known as nevus flammeus. It is congenital malformation of the vessels within the superficial dermis. On histopathology, vascular spaces of varying caliber which are separated by the fibrous septa are seen. They are sharply demarcated soft pink patch that does not blanch with pressure, and it is most frequently located on the face. So this does not blanch with pressure, whereas capillary hemangioma, it will blanch with the pressure. So that is the differentiating point. It is unilateral. It is aligned with the skin area supplied one or more division of the trigeminal nerve, as you can see over here. Usually the first and the second divisions are involved, and there is darkening to red or purplish lesion which occurs with age, and associated soft tissue hypertrophy also occurs. So this is a patient with port wine stain, and you can see the progression of the disease over the year associated with soft tissue hypertrophy. The treatment is laser for skin discoloration. Topical preparation of rapamycin can be used either alone or adjuvant therapy with the laser. Soft tissue debulking can be done. Screening should be done for glaucoma, and systemic investigation, particularly with the lesion in the lumbar area. So why should we do these things? As whenever a patient with port wine stain comes, we have to rule out other symptoms of Sturge-Weber syndrome as well. So what is Sturge-Weber syndrome? It is encephalotrigeminal angiomatosis, and it has a triad of port wine stain, increased IOP and diophthalmos, and vascular headache. And on radiology, the tramline calcifications are pathognomic of this disease. What ipsilateral, parietal, and occipital region is involved, which results in contralateral focal or generalized seizures, hemiparesis, and hemianopia. The ocular features are ipsilateral glaucoma, episcleral hemangioma, iris heterochromia, and diffuse choroidal hemangioma. So whenever a patient with port wine stain comes, you always have to screen for glaucoma, and especially if there are lesion present in the lumbar region. Then we have the pyogenic granuloma. It is a vascularized proliferation of granulation tissue. Granulation tissue can form as a result of trauma or infection or even post-surgery. It is painful, rapidly growing vascular granulating polypoidal lesion that may bleed with trivial trauma. Cutaneous lesions should be excised. Then we have the neurofibroma. As we know that neurofibroma, they are benign nerve tumors, and they are usually nodular or pedunculated and can be found anywhere on the skin. Isolated neurofibromas are common, and when there are multiple, we have to do the systemic workup for neurofibromatosis. Plexiform neurofibromas, as seen in this picture, they present in childhood as a manifestation of neurofibromatosis type 1, and there is characteristic S-shaped deformity of the upper lid. And the solitary lesions, they should be excised, and if there are multiple, we have to take the multidisciplinary team on board and start the treatment. Which of the following has the highest malignant potential? Seborrheic keratosis, actinic keratosis, squamous papilloma, intradermal nevus. Seborrheic keratosis and squamous, they have low malignant potential, and intradermal nevus has no malignant potential. So it has potential for transformation into squamous cell carcinoma. Mobile deep red lesion having hard consistency. Dermoid cyst, pyeloicratoma, syringoma, capillary hemangioma. Because calcification is occurring, so it has a hard consistency. A 1-year-old child presented with an ipsilateral bright red swelling since birth, which increases on crying and blanches on pressure. What will be the first line of treatment? Observation. So first, always we have to observe as long as the visual axis is not being involved and the patient is not going into amblyopia. At 29,
ब्लैंचिंग पे क्यों प्रेशर पे ब्लैंच क्यों?
से सुपरफिशियल वैस्कुलर इन्वॉल्वमेंट होती है तो ब्लांच करता है, और उसमें भी अगर डीप इन्वॉल्वमेंट हो गई है तो इट विल नॉट ब्लांच विद द प्रेशर.
ठीक है ना, कैपिलरी है ना, प्रेस करेंगे तो
एज लॉन्ग एज इट इज
जो फिर
सुपरफिशियल
वीनस जो है उसको प्रेशर देंगे तो
डीपर.
ओरिजिन की
A 29-year-old female presented with a brownish lesion on the left side of the face. The lesion is present since birth but hasn't changed in size, although its color is getting darker over time. The most likely diagnosis is congenital dermal melanocytosis, porcine stain, strawberry nevus imprint. Porcine stain. Color getting darker over time and not changing in size. A 20-month-old child has a history of nevus clinius on the left side of face and now presented with seizures. Taking into account the findings on the CT, what is the most likely diagnosis? So what are the findings on the CT? Tram-line calcification, that is pathognomonic for Sturge-Weber syndrome. Thank you.
Good.